Hey, yo, what's going on, guys? Got a brand new episode of Buy or Bust for you guys today. We're going to be talking about the brand new season, the Season Pass, and the Super Premium Season Pass. But what is really great about the Super Premium Season Pass this time around is Sparky is the Super Premium Season Pass card, but you can also just get him with your Seasonal Series 5 pack, opposed to having to spend the extra $10 for the Super Premium, which is really solid, which means it's not locked behind a paywall. But if you do use your favorite card, the credit card, and you do spend it for the Super Premium Season Pass, you get a variant and you unlock Sparky, so it's like retroactive in that sense, and you don't have to spend tokens. But you now have the opportunity to either spend tokens or to pay money, which is why we're making this video here. Should you get the Season Pass? Should you get the Super Premium Season Pass? Let's go ahead and find out as we talk about the good and the bad for Viv Vision, Sparky, as well as 2 decks for each card, key synergies and counters for both cards, as well as the floors and the ceilings for them as well. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. So in case you guys did not know, Viv Vision is a 3-2. So they just changed her with the dev video. So when I got this image in from snap.fan, she's still a 3-3, but she is a 3-2. So just keep that in mind for the majority of this video. But if you guys did not know what Viv Vision does, at the start of each turn, give all cards in your hand +1 power if you're winning here. Otherwise, move this to another location. This is what it looks like in game. This is going to be a kind of location control-esque or a priority control-esque kind of sort of card here, where you're going to want to be winning at this location at the end of a turn. So at the start of the next turn, she doesn't move to another location. Kind of think about Iron Patriot in a way. But instead of end of turn like Iron Patriots, you're wanting to be winning their end of turn, and then at the start of the turn, she gives you the buff on the cards. So just keep that in mind when it comes down to this card itself. It's not going to happen at the end of the turn. It has to happen at the beginning of the next turn. So that means also like Havoc, if Havoc does go off on a Viv Vision lane, Viv Vision will move over to a different lane at the start of that turn because Havoc may have now taken over that lane's power. So just keep that in mind when it comes to this card. Next, we're going to have Sparky, which Sparky is also a very interesting card. It is an activate. Give your card that last moved +3 power and move it back to its previous location. This is what it looks like in game. This is something you can use with Madam Web. You can use it with Hercules, Zorn. If a card got moved by Juggernaut, those are definitely cards there that help, get value for your Sparky itself. Of course, if a card did not move last, like if there's no card that last moved, like if your card doesn't move at all, Sparky won't do anything. A card does have to move for this to happen. Just keep that in mind. But let's talk about the key synergies for Viv Vision first. So starting off, I am thinking Sebastian Shaw. I'm thinking Surfer. Surfer is definitely one of the main cards or one of the main archetypes that's going to be great for Viv. Same with a Hydra Stomper. If this card does move, that is also a move that does buff your Hydra Stomper. So think about it in that style of deck too. Think of course, you're not really wanting to move all the time because you're wanting to get that extra power onto your cards. But if it does move, you can still get value with like the Hydra Stomper, Miles Morales, and even a Wiccan, because I'm thinking about like with Wiccan, you're trying to play cards out on tempo. It's not a bad 3 cost to just play out on curve for your Wiccan. And Wiccan has a pretty solid stat line himself too, so you can play your Wiccan onto that Viv Vision as well. And your opponents are also, thinking about playing cards onto those lanes. So you can have your Viv Vision, you can have like a Negasonic set up on your Viv as well, because your opponents are trying to contest those lanes. Like you can have the cards that can gain value from your opponents playing cards there. You could maybe try the Guardians. I probably wouldn't suggest doing the Guardians. Maybe like a Rocket and Groot, though. Juggernaut, Negasonic, definitely too. Like just some of those bigger cards, I think, get some really good value there. But the key synergies for Sparky, Madam Web. Like I was talking about, Madam Web, whenever your card moves over, Sparky can move it back into the Madam Web blade. Let's say you don't have the Iron Fist, you don't have the Ghost Spider, you don't have the Urania. You have Sparky to be able to move it back to your Madam Web lane to be able to get extra movements there. You can also do it in such a way where you've moved the card, you Sparky it, then you move it again. You can potentially get like 3 moves in 1 turn, which is crazy. With the Sparky value and like Madam Web and other move enablers, which is wild. And then also gets the +3 when it moves too, which is really solid. +3 is always really good. Phoenix Force is another style deck, especially if you're maybe going into the Torch line. Even though Torch is a 3 cost now, it still can get really good value with the Sparky being moved to the Phoenix Force, or even like multiple men. Of course, you're going to have multiple men. Whenever that multiple man moves again, it'll get that +3 power, and then it'll get a copy of that original multiple man that just moved back. So, you know, multiple man when it gets destroyed is a 2/3. With Phoenix Force, it is then a 2/8. With Sparky, it would make it essentially a 2/11, so you'd have 2 copies of 2/11 with the multiple man. You still would have that 2/8 as well, so you'd have 3 multiple men, which is really crazy to be able to move around and get some extra value like the Phoenix Force power line. So I'm very excited to see how that works. And then, of course, the next one is going to be Viv. If Viv does move, you know, her base stat line, she is a 3/2. With Sparky, you can make her a 3/5, which makes your opponent have to compete a little bit more with that card and helps you kind of mitigate what locations you also really want to fight for, using that with Sparky as kind of a synergy too. The Season Pass card working with the Super Premium Season Pass card is pretty cool. And then when we talk about the counters, both these cards do get countered by Scream. This is going to be a very heavy Scream meta, I do think, this season, especially with a lot of people trying Viv. So just keep that in mind. Scream is going to be everywhere. Both these cards can also technically work with Scream. I think Viv working with Scream could be interesting, like in the Hydra Stomper list, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later in the video as well. Spoiler alert. But I definitely think both those cards can get countered by Scream. Shadow King. Shadow King affects the cards that Viv buffed, also affects the card that Sparky buffs. So keep that in mind while you're playing this around too. And then Red Guardian. Red Guardian hitting Viv makes it so she can't move and buff your cards. Red Guardian hitting Sparky. You don't get the activate anymore. Can't really do anything with Sparky. Another just main card that can really offset this. Kingpin, of course, going with Scream to offset the Sparky, to offset your Viv. Those are definitely 2 of those cards that kind of, you know, can counter what you got going on here. But let's go ahead and talk about the good and the bad for Viv Vision. All right. So starting first with Viv Vision, like I was saying, it buffs your entire hand. So every single card against your hand, think of like Nakia, but it can happen multiple times. It's not limited just to one turn. You just do have to meet, you know, the prefix or the if statement of you have to be winning the location at the start of the turn for Viv to go off. And it's unknown power for your opponents. Your opponents, of course, see Viv go off. They see how many cards are in your hand, but they don't know what cards they are exactly. So you have that surprise factor, kind of like with Gwenpool in a sense. Of course, with Gwenpool, it's a little bit different because with Gwenpool, it all happens on one turn. You get that 6 power. Is it divvied up? Is it onto one card? But with Viv, they don't necessarily know when the cards were originally in your hand. Did they get the first buff? Do they get the second buff? Do they get the maybe hypothetical third buff? How many times are these cards going to get buffed? And which cards, you know, were in the hand when Viv happened, or which one were drawn later, and so on and so forth. So you had that unknown factor, which is nice. And like you have to play onto the Viv lane to be able to stop the Viv tempo. In order to offset Viv from being able to use her ability, you have to play onto the Viv lane, or you have to move Viv, which is like what I was talking about with Scream, moving Viv to be able to try and like offset that combo you're getting with the Viv. So I think those are kind of like the 4 main goods for this card. Moving on to the bad, though, you do have to be winning the location in order to get the extra power. Otherwise, Viv is going to move to a location you maybe do not want her to go to. Kind of like with Silk. Of course, the difference with Silk is whenever someone plays a card there, so Silk can move multiple times the same exact turn, whereas Viv only moves once at the start of the turn. So just keep that in mind. And then Scream meta. I'm telling you, Scream meta is just, it's going to be a Scream meta this season. Like, Fudge was already talking about it on stream last night. I was already thinking about it, so I think we're all in the same headspace where Scream is going to be back and dominant. The new Scream variant also came out. And then when we talk about the good for Sparky over here, it's an activate. So you don't have to play it out. Like, you don't have to activate it immediately, which we'll come back to this. So, like, you can wait till certain moves happen before you do Sparky things. It doesn't have to be the first move that happens. It doesn't have to be the second move. It could be the last move, or it could be the almost last move. Like, you have a different bunch of options to be able to use Sparky here. And then it's also, you know, it's an upgrade, I would say, for Madam Web decks, because you get that extra value of getting more moves in a turn, which is something you want in a move deck, and it not costing you extra energy that turn to do the move. With Sparky, like I was talking about, using it as a play for later, using it as a play prior, it allows you just to have some setup options there. You know, +3 power normally is crazy good. So we'll see how long that lasts if Sparky, you know, gets too crazy. But I think it's going to be a really solid +3 power. We love that. And then is it a Juggernaut counter? You know, Juggernaut moves your card. If you don't have priority, Juggernaut moves your card. Sparky can move that card back into the Juggernaut lane. Of course, it depends on the order of which the cards were moved over, because the first card you move in the Jug lane is the first card the Jug moves. The second card would be the second card. So instead of the first card coming back to the lane, it would be the second card. So play order does matter in that sense into that Juggernaut kind of, matchup and situation here. But let's talk about the bad for the little guy, little Sparky here. So it is an activate, so it can't be used the same turn unless, of course, you have Jocasta and maybe you're running Jocasta Sparky. I don't know if that's actually something you're going to be doing, but you do have to wait an entire turn for this to be able to be usable. So it's not the best when you do draw this late, and a card does have to move for Sparky to give it +3. If no card is moved and you activate Sparky, nothing happens. The card just sits there and Sparky just uses activate for no reason. So you hate to see it. And then Scream is everywhere. Scream is going to be everywhere with especially these first two cards, which I think these are going to be some of the main cards people are going to be messing around with, opposed to the Series 4 cards coming out this next week as well. And it's kind of niche. I think it's a little bit more niche than Viv. Of course, in those niche-style decks, it's going to be crazy powerful, potentially, but it is going to be more on the niche side. Moving on to the floor and the ceiling for Viv Vision. On the floor for Viv, she is a 3-2. That is a late draw. Doesn't really do anything for you. She's just a 3-2. You add her to the board. Or if she never is winning a location and she's just moving around, you don't get any buffs from her. She gets the movement, and if you move cards, maybe that helps. But you don't get any of the extra value from getting power into the cards in your hands. But I think in the middle line, this ability goes off once or twice. You're winning a location 2 times. You play her on turn 3, so you have the beginning of turn 4, you have the beginning of turn 5, and you have the beginning of turn 6. So I'm thinking at 1 or 2 times that buff goes off, and you get that into your hand, 1 or 2 times. That's kind of like the average of probably what's going to happen. Best case scenario, though, with Viv is going to be she goes off all 3 turns. So she goes off start turn 4, she goes off start turn 5, and goes off the start turn 6. You get +3 power pretty much to every single card in your hand, which is really good. So that would be the absolute ceiling, which is not impossible. It's just probably not going to be as likely as probably hitting 1 or 2 times a game, but that's going to be the floor and the ceiling for Viv. As we do move on to the Sparkinator over here. Little Sparky, worst case scenario, it's a late draw or no card is moved, so you don't get any value from Sparky, which is really interesting also with Sparky, since it says last card move and it's not turn specific. If you've only moved 1 card the entire game, you could hypothetically wait and then activate Sparky later to move that card back to where it originally was, but you kind of have to keep track mentally of where that card also was originally. But of course, the ceiling for it is a card is moving, you can activate this card. You give that card +3, and it's one of your combo cards. That really helps. You kind of like have a really good opportunity there. That's kind of like where that is, because it's just this card just it happens or it doesn't happen. That's like the floor and the ceiling kind of aspect for this. But let's move on to our 2 Viv Vision decks. All right. So the first Viv Vision deck we have is going to be a Surfing Visions deck. We have Surge. We also have Forge as 2 cards that can also buff cards. So Forge hitting your Viv, so she's a 3-4, giving her a better stat line, help you be able to contest some of these lanes. You also have Surge to potentially even maybe get a Gwenpool or Galacta out early. And it's, Surfer, so you're just trying to get some value there. Your main cards you're trying to buff are your Brood, your Captain Carter, your Shaw. You, of course, have Mr. Fantastic First Steps in here, too. You have Copycat for some of that tech. Of course, Juggernaut's not a 3 cost anymore. He's a 4 cost. You could have the argument where you want maybe a different 3 drop. Maybe you want a Gladiator in here to have some extra power to be able to, nuke some more stuff. Maybe you want a Fenris Wolf if you're running Gladiator for that kind of aspect, too. You have your Red Guardian for tech. You have Galacta to also buff cards. Galacta hitting your Viv Vision. So then your Viv Vision also has extra power going to the next turn. So you could potentially be winning a game or winning a lane with Viv Vision to get extra buffs onto your Surfer cards. You're just kind of just trying to buff a lot of stuff, pretty much is your main idea here. And then you're playing Surfer to kind of be your top end, kind of try and win the game there. So we have Surfing Vision. Next, of course, we're going to power up movers. This is a Hydra Stomper Scream deck. So you're playing into the Scream narrative as well yourself, because some of these cards getting extra power on their base is really good. Of course, Viv moving also gives you the Miles value, gives you Craven value. But having any of these kind of having an extra stat line can help you into a potential mirror matchup with your Viv Vision, or just in general, because these cards have really solid base stats as is as well, which Cannibal also is a 5-6 here, not a 5-8, so just keep that in mind. Is really good just in general, and a lot of these cards, Scream has value. You can play your Viv into your Scream lane, or have ways to move cards out of the Viv lane to give Viv extra power, or just extra value, not necessarily extra power, extra value to be able to buff some of your other cards. It's kind of the general concept here. Next, moving on to our Sparky decks. The first one, of course, is going to be just Move Bounce. It's kind of like the original package of Move Bounce, of course, with Vulture, Torch, and Dagger. You also have Sage. You can move Sage out, give Sage +3, and then also it's really cool with like almost any of these moves here. You can move them with Madam Web and then Sparky them back and then Frigga, and then that is 3 different moves. 3 different moves that have just happened onto our card, or 2 different moves one turn. Sorry, 2 different moves that have happened one turn, and then you get the Frigga. So then you have that card happen there. I don't know what the math is. I looked at Frigga and I saw 3, and that's where the 3 went. But you have 2 different moves that happen on the same turn. And then you Frigga, you get a copy of that card that moved twice. Seems pretty solid. And then the next deck we're going to have is going to be the Electric Force. It is going to be a Phoenix Force with Sparky. You also have Nimrod in here. Something you could do with Nimrod and Sparky as well is you could Ghost Spider your Nimrod and then Sparky it back over, so your Nimrod then has 9 power before you destroy it with your Venom and Carnage, which also is something you can do that can be a little bit techy there. You, of course, have Kid Omega to destroy Nimrod, and then you have, Phoenix Force to be able to revive the Nimrod if you don't have the other lines. You have, Multiple Man. You have the Hulkbuster. Hulkbuster, applying itself to another card. Makes it a new card, so then you could Ghost Spider it, you could Kid Omega it there, then you could also Venom it. Like, there's a bunch of different options and, like, different outs. So, like, here, you also have Zola. With Zola here, too, you can do this in such a way where you've moved your Torch over to another lane, but then you Sparky it back, and then you Zola it, so then you have 2 moves in 1 turn again. And then your Zola is able to, add copies of the card that's moved twice now into other lanes, which is a really cool just opportunity for you there. And that's going to be the gist of the decks. Let's go ahead and give it a nice more kind of like what I think is going to be my idea for these cards in general. We're going to start off with Viv. I do believe she is a fairly strong card. I think what she can do is strong. Her base power isn't great. It is a 3-2. Just keep that in mind. So a 3-2. So you really have to try and contest those lanes with the power being less. But if you can at least get the buff to happen once or twice a game, like I was talking about on average, you probably can. That's a really good factor to help you kind of go over the top potentially of your opponents. It's also fairly flexible. It's not just in one style deck. You can use it, I think, in a different variety as a 3-cost too, allowing it to be flexible, which is nice. It's not the most flexible, so just keep that in mind. If they do adjust it, maybe it's underperforming, they make her back to a 3-3, but they put her at a 3-2 because maybe she was overperforming in the testing they were doing. So I'm just kind of thinking that in mind. If they do adjust her, they would maybe buff her instead or change it from start of turn to end of turn. So that would be potentially how they would buff her if she's not performing the way they think she is. And then with Sparky, I think Sparky is very strong. I think +3 and you get to move it back to where it previously was, allowing you to set up better bounce combos, better Madam Web combos, the Phoenix Force combos, or having just other means to like mess around with it. It's really nice. This works with your Hellion, it works with Cloak, it works with Ghost Spider, Aranya, Madam Web, Iron Fist, like Zorn, Hercules. Like, there's a bunch of different stuff it works with. Even some locations too, which is really nice. So I think it's strong, and it gives your card +3. I think that's absolutely incredible. Flexibility, maybe it's not the most flexible. Maybe it is more flexible than Viv, and I just haven't cooked enough. So like, totally let me know there, because maybe that could totally be it. But I think this card is going to be really solid. If they do adjust it, they would make it +2 instead of +3. If the +3 is just too strong and it is overperforming. But I think this is, of the two, probably the better card in the Season Pass. Like, if this was the Season Pass and Viv was the Super Premium, I think it'd be like, yo, this is absolutely insane. What are they doing kind of thing? But I understand it. Like, I totally understand it. But with that in mind, I do think you should buy Viv as a Season Pass card. That, of course, adds extra weight to it because of just how good the Season Pass and what it does for you in this game is. I would totally do that. I would buy the Season Pass no matter what. So I think that is absolutely incredible. I think she's going to be a pretty good card. I do think you're going to be in a lot of Scream metas, and I think that's kind of going to be affecting this. So we'll see how that works and how long Scream lasts in OTA before they adjust Scream, because they want their Season Pass card to be absolutely amazing and they want it to, make as much money as possible, right? So we'll see what happens there. But I definitely also think Sparky's a buy. Whether that is paying for the Super Premium Season Pass to get Sparky, or you don't have to spend the money on Sparky at all, you don't have to get the Season Pass at all, and you open your Seasonal Series 5-pack, you can get Sparky there, which I think is a great feature, by the way. But if you did want to spend the money, you do retroactively get a variant for Sparky, and you do get the base card, because that's the way the bundles and stuff work now. If you don't own the card, you buy a bundle for that card, you do get that base card and you get the variant, so just keep that in mind. But I think this card is going to be really great. I definitely think this is also going to be a buy, so I'd be buying both cards. But I still want to say, at the end of the day, especially when it comes to Viv, you are spending real-life currency. You are not spending just in-game currency to be able to get Viv. If you don't really want her, you could wait an entire month and get Viv in the Seasonal Series 5 pack next season in October. And you could get Sparky within the Seasonal Series 5 pack this week when Sparky comes out. So if you want to get Sparky now instead, you can kind of just choose between that. Instead of having to spend the real-life currency, you can just spend the Series 5, I mean the 5K tokens to be able to get that. But still, spend your guys' resources the way you want to spend them, guys. What do you enjoy playing? That is the most important part of when it comes to spending your resources. Do and get what you really want to, play and what you guys really want to do. At the end of the day, I can be wrong about cards. Us as theory crafters who make these type of videos can totally be wrong about cards because we haven't been able to test it. We don't know necessarily if the meta is going to shift. Of course, it is going to shift into a Scream meta. Just keep that in mind. I do think Scream is going to be everywhere. So if you don't really want to deal with that type of meta for this long haul or for the start of the season, definitely not. We also have 2 additional Series 4 cards coming out with Omega Sentinel and with Awesome Andy. So just keep that in mind too, as they're also coming out in the same exact week. So maybe you want to get those cards instead. Totally feel free. It's your resources, spend it the way you want to. But good cards do get buffed. They do. Good cards get buffed. Good cards also get nerfed. Bad cards also get nerfed, and bad cards also get buffed. The OTAs these nowadays are kind of all over the place. It just happens. The good cards maybe get buffed. Maybe the good cards get nerfed. Maybe the bad cards get buffed. Maybe the bad cards get nerfed. It's all over the place. I don't know. The meta is kind of just shifting everywhere right now. There's still Merc Ball. Even after the OTA, Fenris took a hit, Juggernaut took a hit, which were 2 well-deserved cards took a hit. But you can still Cannonball Mercury. Cannonball just lost 2 points of power. But it still does what it does. So just keep that in mind. I still don't think Mercury was an issue. But you'll see when we talk about that on the app on Tuesday. You guys will see more about that. But this season is coming up, and I'm excited for a new season. I'm excited for some new style cards. More Activate, just like last September, we get more Activate cards. So I'm interested to see how the meta kind of shifts. There's a lot of cool stuff happening, and I like cool stuff. Cool stuff is really cool. But I want to say, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Let me know down below what cards new season are you guys most excited for. And if you guys are liking the style of me combining, Season Pass and Super Premium Season Pass in one video, or if you want me to start doing breakdowns for both of them individually, just let me know down below. I really do appreciate it. Definitely feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. It's been real. God bless, and Tucker out.